So we've got a fan question coming in today from Adikeo. Thank you so much for submitting this question. A link to her channel, guys, will be in the description below. This is the question: what is the most difficult or challenging game you have ever played due purely to the game's difficulty rather than glitches or game mechanics? So this is a very interesting question for one reason, and it's because you added in the whole glitches and game mechanics portion to this question. Because had you not added that, I would have simply given you that game that was the most buggy game out there, if you will, or had some shoddy gameplay mechanics, and that would have been my most challenging game. But since you added that, it slightly changes my answer. And I guess there's two ways that I can tackle this, because there are modern day games, right? Games that we've grown up with maybe since like the PS1 and on up, and then there is games that I grew up on when I was a kid, right? Considered to be like the retro games. So I'm gonna go ahead and answer this maybe with both of those time periods in mind. Now, when I think of the word challenging, I don't necessarily think of like throwing my controller across the room. A lot of times, if I'm throwing my controller across the room, it's probably because the game has glitches or it's got bad gameplay mechanics, right? So when I think of challenging, my definition might be a little bit different than most gamers out there. What I consider a challenge is just me having to push through the process of completing the game because the game is not holding my hand, it's not telling me what to do next, and thus, to me, a challenge is born, right? And the game that really encompasses that for me is Demon Souls. Now, the reason why I say Demon Souls is because A, it didn't hold your hand, right? There was no hand holding in Demon Souls whatsoever. B, nobody really knew the blueprint to complete a game like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like we had played Demon Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, and then Dark Souls 3 comes out and we know the formula and it's just a matter of getting through it. There was none of that back in the day. I don't even remember there being a strategy guide out for that game. I don't even know if one was published. I could be wrong on that, but I don't remember seeing one on the market. And I was currently working at GameStop at the time. A lot of you guys already know this story. And I was given a challenge to beat the game in a matter of 2 weeks. And I guess this is gonna answer your question. The game was not only challenging, like I said, because nobody knew how to get through it, but I was also being challenged. You see what I'm saying? So I had added pressure on me to complete this game that everybody thought was, like, at the time at least, was virtually impossible to beat. And then I also had a bet with another gentleman, a challenge imposed on me, where I had to beat the game in 2 weeks. And so that was the most challenging experience I've ever had in a game. And I know that all games have bug mechanics and gameplay issues, but I felt like Demon Souls was solid enough for me to put that as my most challenging game ever. Now, if I had to go retro, I would say, well, it's kind of hard. Like I said, it's kind of hard to find a game that's retro that doesn't have bad gameplay mechanics, because that's part of their charm. There was some out there. Anything that had the Nintendo seal on it was usually pretty good, like your Zeldas and your Marios, but I didn't really find those challenging. And then you're left with like everything else. So if I had to choose, I would say Battletoads is probably one of the toughest games I've ever played. Never have beat that game, by the way. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is another one. I can make it all the way inside of the Technodrome, and then after that, it's all downhill. I can't get through that booger. Let's see. Metroid was challenging, but in a good way, right? Metroid was challenging, but in a good way. I really enjoyed that game. Ninja Gaiden 2 comes to mind, retro-wise, and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out comes to mind. Just naming some off the top of my head. And I'm sure I could think of more for the modern era as well, but since you said the most challenging, I would say Demon Souls, like I said, because I had that added pressure of completing a challenge, right? And then also just beating a game that nobody really knew the formula for, and even if they did know it at the time, I couldn't get any wisdom from these people because I couldn't cheat. So it made it all the more challenging for me, and that's why I'll never forget that experience. By the way, I beat that game in 4 days. I took it home on a Friday and beat it Monday night. So being able to push through that in 4 days was crazy. You know what I mean? I put pretty much my whole weekend into it. I took a weekend off from work and just played. I mean, anytime my eyes were open, I was playing that game. So that's it. Hopefully that answered your question. Guys, remember, if you have a fan question, it really helps me out, especially when we're in the fall gaming season like this and I'm steady working on projects. Right now I'm covering Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. It's so nice to be able to open up my inbox and see a question and give me an idea about doing a show. It makes it so much easier on me. So if you have something you want to ask me, then you can check the link in the description to submit your question, or you can just shoot me an email over at squareonegames@gmail.com and put your question in there. I'll be sure to shout your channel out and leave a link to it in the description below. Thank you so much, Adikeo, for the question. Thank you guys. We'll see you in the next one. You guys be good.